This is Jim Fetzer, your host on Authentic News right here on RBN Live this 31st day of March 2025. The U.S. bomber deployment, the buildup in Diego Garcia, suggests to some airstrikes on Yemen could be coming. But I think that's a misleading impression. Here you have a report from antiwar.com. The U.S. has significantly increased its presence of heavy bombers at its base on Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, signaling the U.S. could launch heavier airstrikes on Yemen. According to open source reports, the U.S. has sent 5, it may be 6, B-52 Spirit stealth bombers at $500 million apiece, and at least 7 C-17 transport to Diego Garcia. U.S. is also deploying additional aircraft carrier to the Middle East. The additional firepower in the region could be used to ramp up airstrikes on Yemen, as the Houthis have been undeterred by the daily U.S. bombing that started on March 15th. And President Trump has threatened the group with annihilation. Well, don't be played. This is not about the Houthis. This is about Iran. Here we have more. U.S. launches 65 airstrikes across northern Yemen in 24 hours. All this is true. In the past 24 hours, the U.S. launched a series of 65 airstrikes targeting several northern provinces in Yemen, including Sinai, Sada, Al-Hunda, Al-Awa, Marib, and Amran. This is virtually all civilian residential area. According to Houthi-run media, 1 person was killed, 4 others injured in Sada, where communication were disrupted in several parts of Amran after bombing key infrastructure. In the capital city of Sinai, 11 strikes were reported, including 8 attacks on the Al-Sad district of Sanhan and 2 on Sana'a International Airport. Meanwhile, the northern Sada, Brada, the Houthi stronghold, saw 17 airstrikes, going heavy bombardment around the city of Sada, its outskirts, and the surrounding district of Sarin Khatib. This is all just embarrassing, shocking, shameful. Meanwhile, Israel provided the intel. Are we surprised? For the airstrike discussed in the Signal chat, Wall Street Journal reported Israel provided the U.S. with the intel for the airstrikes on a residential building, mind you, residential building in Yemen, discussed and celebrated by top Trump admin officials in a Signal chat published by The Atlantic. Bear in mind, they're going after one guy, and they bring down a whole building. I'll bet they took out 200 people to take the one. That's a form of collective punishment. That's a violation of human rights. That's a violation of international law. And you got the Trump team cheering. National Security Advisor Mike Walls, who added the Atlantic editor-in-chief to the chat, said a strike ignited the Houthis, targeted the Houthis' top missile guy after he entered a residential building where his girlfriend lived. He said the strike collapsed the building. So this is what the United States is reduced to? Killing hundreds of innocents to get a targeted guy? That's the United States of America? Is that the country you believe in? Is that what our founding fathers had in mind? Massey, Thomas Massey, one of the few honorable members of the American Congress today. Houthi strikes, not America first. He also said Signal chat proved there was no clear urgency and therefore Congress should have been notified. He's 100% correct. In an interview this morning, Thomas Massey said there was clearly no urgency for U.S. military airstrikes against the Houthis in Yemen, now in their 13th day. Therefore, the admin should have gone to Congress for authorization, and without it, the strikes are illegal. That's under American law. Massey pointed to VP Vance's contribution to the now infamous Signal chat, where he described the strikes as they were happening. JD's identified in the chat, which has been authenticated by the admin, among other points. He said there's a strong argument for delaying this a month, delaying the message and doing the messaging work on why this matters, seeing where the economy is, etc. Vance's contribution there was to prove the chat was no urgency and that there were no U.S. troops who were in imminent danger that needed to be defended, which is the instance in which you might allow the president to engage in hostilities if it were in self-defense and urgent. And before they had time to come to Congress, Massey reported, but they obviously, based on the Signal chat, had time to come to Congress, but they chose not to. He makes important points. Meanwhile, Tulsi Gabbard is calling Trump the president of peace. Doesn't it sound an awful lot like the Prince of Peace? Where have we heard that before? Despite the Yemen bombing campaign and support for the Gaza slaughter, on Saturday, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard called President Trump the president of peace, despite his bombing campaign in Yemen and his support for the mass slaughter of Palestinians in Gaza. I am repulsed. I've been a huge fan of Tulsi, but this is ridiculous. President Trump is the president of peace. He is ending bloodshed across the world and will deliver lasting peace in the Middle East, Gabbard wrote on X. Where Joe Biden failed, President Trump will succeed. Sounds like a shill to me. Gabbard made the comments in a post sharing a quote from President Trump, who claims his admin was engaged in relentless diplomacy. Relentless diplomacy? Bombing Yemen? Slaughtering Palestinians? Threatening Iran? Relentless diplomacy to forge a lasting peace in the Middle East built on the historic Abraham Accords. Gabbard has been supportive of Trump's daily bombing campaign in Yemen and was one of the admin officials in the leaked Signal chat celebrating the bombing of a residential building. This is just terrible, embarrassing, very bad. Meanwhile, we have Colonel McGregor talking about what's going on here, why it's happening. This guy is the best. Here we have
a grave threat to the United States.
No.
And if that be the case, then, and since at least according to the last 20 years, both the CIA and the Mossad have both publicly said that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapons program. They're increasing their capacity, the breakout time is shrinking, et cetera. But so far, they have not actually had it. So what is the impetus right now that seems to be compelling these, urgent actions to tell them they can't have a bomb when they don't have one?
The Israel lobby.
Is that plain and simple?
Is that okay? Towards what end? Because actually, in the Israeli media today, there is some concern on their side that the Netanyahu government is trying to compel Trump into this. It says that he is inspired by Trump to act after Biden's warning against altering democracy. Actually, that's not the one I was looking for, Gary, not just yet. There was another one where the Israelis were saying that they're trying to go to war against Iran and trying to drag the United States in with them. So there seems to be some acknowledgement. Yeah, that's the one right there. So that's what the Haaretz is saying, the Israeli media. Is that true?
On the face of it, yes.
And so why do you suppose that, this is a silly question, but Trump, who's nearly everywhere else always talking about wanting peace, he wants to stop the killing, et cetera, like in the Ukraine war here, and he's always been against stupid wars, especially in the Middle East. But why do you suppose that he would be convinced? And money aside, I mean, a lot of people gave money to his campaign. Why would he be so willing to go down a path that I think would be clearly antagonistic for the United States and terribly unproductive?
The Israel lobby.
But I get that they wanted that. There's no question about that. The question is, why are we participating in it?
I think you have to go back and look at what's happened over the last 3 decades. Mark Levin is a very articulate spokesman for that position. And the argument has been forever, whether it's the Foundation for the Defense of Democracy, which we finally usually call the Foundation for the Destruction of Everything. These entities have all been extraordinarily well-financed for many, many years to push the United States into direct conflict with Iran on the grounds that Israel as a state in the Middle East will never be secure or safe until Iran is subjugated. Now, subjugated means its offensive military capability, which is all missile, frankly, and firepower over great distance, in other words, striking power, until that's eliminated. That's the position. And the Israel lobby has funded everyone on the Hill holding a position in the House or the Senate, as well as candidates to become members of the cabinet. They have funded that position and people that support it. Right now, they exert more control directly over how Congress will behave, over how the White House will behave as a result than they ever have in their past. So what you're effectively is asking me is, if this is not really in the interest of the American people, why is President Trump prepared to do it? And I think it's because President Trump obviously favors Israel. There's no mystery in that, and I certainly understand that. But he also made commitments in the run-up to the election and over the last couple of years that if he were elected, he would follow through on this. And I think that's the essence of his ultimatum. Now, I don't think ultimatums are a good idea. They don't usually work. We gave an ultimatum to Spain in 1898, and actually the Spaniards pretty much accepted it, and we still went to war with them. A similar event happened with Austria-Hungary vis-a-vis Serbia. The Serbs accepted all the provisions of the ultimatum except one, and Austria-Hungary should have been satisfied with that, but instead went to war. And I think the Iranians are looking at what we're saying to them as another ultimatum that will inevitably lead to war against them. And most states, most of the time, no matter how small they may be, and remember, Serbia was quite small in comparison to Austria-Hungary. Spain, though it was still in the rank of, I would say, middleweight power, it was a long way from the Western Hemisphere, but they don't usually negotiate well under pressure. In other words, if you threaten them, they find it very difficult to accede to your wishes. So I think we're in a difficult position now because we've made this ultimatum. Either you sit down and talk to us, which implies that we're going to demand from you some version of what previously we had with the Obama administration, this GCPOA, Joint Comprehensive Agreement about nuclear weapons. And you've got to do this with us now, or we're going to bomb you into the Stone Age.
And you know, but part of the problem with that is that they're not even going back to that one. I think they're asking something that's almost impossible for the Iranians to add. What's being reported is two specifically new components. One is that they dismantle their entire long-range missile capacity, so they don't have the ability to transport any nuclear warheads, and then that they dismantle, like physically, their nuclear energy program to include all the centrifuges, everything, so they can't even do it. And I can't think of any nation on the planet that would agree to that.
Well, I tend to agree with you, and I think the underlying truth is Israel has us in a position where we are obligated to support anything they do. And they are waging a war for regional supremacy, effectively a war to subjugate everyone in the region to their will.
But
and as long as they have us, they're quite confident they can achieve that.
Yeah,
if they're on their own, it's a much more difficult proposition.
But I'm not convinced that they could accomplish that militarily anyway. I mean, let's just look at the first element of it, the Iran part. You touched on this a second ago, but just from a military perspective for the moment, let's say that the U.S. gave the support similar to what we did when we helped Israel, and it's the couple of times when it's either fended off attacks from Iran or assisted apparently in some of the Iranian attacks into Iran. But if you actually went to war with them and said, all right, we're going to bomb your facilities, et cetera, what would Iran likely do in response? And then how would we counter that? Meaning, this seems like to me it could go off the rails, but not succeed. You're not going to destroy a country just by air and missile power.
Well, I don't necessarily disagree with you. And you know I've written on this subject and talked about it. And this is a subject for discussion about the plausibility of what we think we can or can't do. I think the coming strikes scheduled for the Houthis are designed to be a demonstration, in fact, of what can be done to Iran. I don't think that's going to change anything in Iran, as you know. But you've got to understand that you're asking the really critical question is, go ahead and bomb, and then what?
Right.
What comes after? And after to the Israelis and to the Washington government right now, administration, is the inability of Iran to pose any threat under any circumstances to Israel.
Brad Schimmel surrounds himself with extremists.
Yeah, I think he's got it exactly right. Exactly right. Meanwhile, Pepe Escobar, what am I seeing in Yemen? Well, this is also a bit of a video. This is with Judge Napolitano. Here's just a bit of it.
You've been in Yemen for a week now. What are you seeing?
Yes. Oh, God. I cannot give you an answer in 1 or 2 minutes. We'll have to have 10 judging freedoms in a row to answer with a degree of... It's an amazing experience. I am an old school foreign correspondent. This year is my 40th year all around the world. There, in terms of interacting with Yemenis, in terms of understanding how they think, in terms of seeing life not only here in the capital, now bombed every day by CENTCOM, but in the middle of this week, I was in Sada Governorate in northwest Yemen, not very far, a little over 100 kilometers from the Saudi border. And that's deep, deep Yemen. And it was absolutely extraordinary. We saw, of course, effects of bombing by the Saudi so-called coalition, a war that started. And it was not a coincidence. They took us there on the middle of this week because on the March 25th, which was Wednesday this week, it's exactly the 10th year of the start of the war of the coalition, the Saudi coalition against Yemen.
Yeah.
Have you ever
planted a break
for your home garden, orchard, or farm? Well, you'll know how frustrating it is when deer don't stop nibbling at them and you lose years of growth. We have a very economic solution called Tree Savers. It's basically a greenhouse tube at a very economical price. Most of the tubes are $3 to $4, depending on the length that you want. Very easy installation. Check us out at FURION.com. Furious Growth, that's FURION.com. Susanna's Secret, Real Essential Oils of Nature, would like to thank you and RBN listeners for your previous purchases. We're announcing that we have a new waterless diffuser in stock with a full 1-year warranty. You just insert the bottle to the top, screw it in, tip it upside down, set your timer, or it's also motion activated at FURION.com. That's FURION.com.
Do you begin to smell some funky little things going on? Let me share this story with you. It's not so much a story, it's something.
Well, the Atlantic has published the attack plans that they were sharing on Signal, the Atlantic. Michael Waltz, that's the national security advisor, who has never impressed me. His Venmo is public and it's full of journalists. He's in hot water now. Don't be surprised if he is not promptly replaced. Meanwhile, here's Colonel McGregor on the Signal security labs. What that was all about with Judge Napolitano.
That the Secretary of State committed espionage by failing to safeguard military secrets. There are two, as you know, espionage statutes. One prohibits the willful failure to safeguard. The other prohibits the negligent failure to safeguard.
Potentially, I suppose it is, could be prosecuted, certainly for negligence, which is what I would chalk this up to. Again, you're talking about people without much experience. They're in jobs that are way beyond anything they've ever done before, and they're doing things that they did when they were civilians. And you just, that's just an impossibility now. You can't even walk out of your office and make an off-the-cuff statement. If you're the Secretary of Defense or the Director of the CIA, Director of National Intelligence, Secretary of State, whatever you say, your words have to be carefully chosen. Now, they don't seem to understand that anything at that high level involving any potential action or policy that the White House may direct should be treated at least as extremely confidential, if not top secret, which means, again, you go back to the network that is encrypted. I'm surprised that whoever works for Secretary Hegseth did not go to him and say, look, you really need to reconsider this discussion and let's put it on the secure network. But then again, he may have done these things without consulting anybody in his office. Who knows?
Yeah, I think that Judge did not mean the Secretary of State, but rather Secretary of Defense. Meanwhile, Macron says not all European leaders have agreed on sending troops to Ukraine, but get this, France and the UK plan to do it. President Macron hosted about 30 leaders in Paris Thursday to discuss plans for Ukraine and acknowledge that not all European countries want to send troops as part of a potential future peace deal. It's not unanimous, he said, insisting some European countries will still send a reassurance force to Ukraine, despite Russia's strong objections, any sort of deployment of Western troops, and the lack of U.S. support for the idea. Macron said the deployment he envisions would not act as peacekeeping forces or replace Ukrainian troops on the front lines. He said the purpose would be to send troops to strategic towns and bases to act as a deterrent against potential Russian aggression. It sounds pretty silly to me. Meanwhile, here we get InfoWars reporting. Total effing war. UK and France officially sending troops to fight Russians in Ukraine. This is dated March 28th. This is really stunning stuff. where do we have the report? Here's Alex.
Ponying up the 860-something billion they tried to get the other EU countries on board with. A bunch of them said no, like Italy and Hungary. But the other countries are saying they'll double the amount they were going to give. $5 billion just got given the last week by France and England. Another couple billion coming today. And they're flooding it with troops. And they're going to put their flags on their uniforms now. They've not been doing that. Been covert hybrid war, proxy war. And it's just going up the RAND Corporation threat continuum ladder. And the Russian war games call it the threat ladder as well. You've heard Trump's intelligence folks say, we're going up the threat ladder. This has got to stop. Never heard those terms used by Biden, but he did say you send F-16s and Abrams tanks. That's World War III because the escalation. Well, we're already way past that. And the psychotics have got a gun to our head, literally sending troops to officially fight the Russians. And they've said in their statements when British and French troops get killed, they're going to invoke total war. And they got PSAs running across the EU, prepare for nuclear war and get food and water. And they're launching national drafts and conscripting women in multiple EU countries and telling the other ones, get ready in the UK, France, and Germany. Prepare for the national draft for men and women. Total fucking war.
There you go. There you go. I think Alex has it right. This is idiotic. Meanwhile, Hal Turner will be right back. Well, Hal Turner reports a body exchange shows a ratio in the Russia-Ukraine conflict at 909 to 43. That's a tad misleading, but we got a lot of dead Ukrainians and a much more modest number of dead Russians. I've reported before, stand by, roughly 1 million Ukrainians plus and about 100 to 150,000 Russians. That's how it's falling out. Meanwhile, Israel is seeking countries to take large numbers of Palestinians. They want to ship them off. This is ethnic cleansing in the kind and gentle version. You're either dead or you're deported. As Tel Aviv works to implement President Trump's plan to cleanse the Palestinians from the Gaza Strip, Israeli Mossad is approaching other countries to take in large numbers of Gazans. Trump has said he wants to send the Palestinians to refugee cities in another country. What the hell right does he have to make this kind of declaration? It's simply outrageous. Outrageous. I am just disgusted with this government. Meanwhile, Israel plans to forcibly depopulate Gaza, but according to Mendoweiss, it won't work. The Israeli War Cabinet approved the creation of a special agency to organize voluntary immigration of Palestinians from Gaza on Sunday. It was in line with the announced plan of U.S. President Trump to expel Palestinians from the Strip, even though the U.S. has since backed down. Israel's Channel 12 reported the cabinet was briefed on the international dimensions of creating a special agency, and that Israel's Defense Ministry under Israel Katz would oversee the creation and implementation of the expulsion plan. Katz indicated the ministry will implement the plan within a local and international legal framework. The idea of doing this, their attempt, it's explicit, public, and enjoys the full support of the U.S. More importantly, it's time it's willing to go all the way to accomplish its displacement agenda. But it won't work in eliminating Palestinian resistance, even if Gaza is ethnically cleansed, no doubt about it. Meanwhile, Israel has refused an Egyptian plan for a Gaza ceasefire. Yeah, they just can't give up killing men, women, and children. That's their thing. Egyptian sources have confirmed that all proposals put forward by Cairo in recent days for a deal between Israel and Hamas have been rejected by Israel, citing the London-based news outlet Al-Arabi Al-Jadid. Israel is intensifying airstrikes on Rafah and surrounding areas near the border with Egypt in an apparent effort to force the displacement of Palestinian residents from southern Gaza. So it's like, herding sheep, but using dynamite to do it. They're trying to get everyone to act the way they want to act by killing them like a moving wave. Meanwhile, Netanyahu vows to attack everywhere in Lebanon as Israel bombs private Beirut school. This is grotesque. While Israel has launched hundreds of attacks on Lebanese territory since a ceasefire went into effect in November, they have so far only done flights over the capital city of Beirut. Today, they started attacking the capital again. Moments before the attack started, IDF spokesman Avichat Adri issued a statement in Arabic on Twitter informing the areas of imminent attack and ordering civilians to withdraw at least 300 meters from the target, which is displayed in a satellite image along with its name. How many do you imagine were there on Twitter getting this announcement? This is a way they try to excuse themselves of responsibility for mass murder. Grotesque. Meanwhile, Vance calls for a closer American partnership with Greenland. He cites the need for U.S. to counter Russian and Chinese influence. I'm sorry, this Greenland thing is just bizarre beyond words. In a speech at a U.S. military base in Greenland, VP Vance called Friday for an American partnership with the people of Greenland to counteract Russian and Chinese influence in the region. So what? We're just going to impose our will? Outrageous. Here you have Vladimir Putin saying the U.S. is serious about Greenland. Serious about Greenland at an Arctic conference. Russian President Vladimir Putin has said President Trump's plan to take control of Greenland are serious. He also said Russia will increase troop numbers in the region. Yes, they may be serious, but I think they're ludicrous. Meanwhile, get this. European workers surrender nearly half of their income to taxes and contributions. And we have a chart here showing the percentage that is given. Belgium, 52.73%. Germany, 47.85%. Austria, 47.3%. This is how much of your income goes to taxes and other governmental obligation. France, 46.83%. Italy, 45.87%. Finland, 43.55%. You get the idea. Unbelievable. Meanwhile, Henry Makow, who's doing a lot of good stuff, has a book out. He's reminding us about Illuminati, the cult that hijacked the world. Bizarre and incredible as it sounds, humanity has been colonized by a satanic cult called the Illuminati. The cult represents Masonic and Jewish bankers who finagled a monopoly over government credit, which allows them to charge interest on funds they create out of nothing. Naturally, they want to protect this prize by translating it into a political and cultural monopoly. This takes the form of a totalitarian world government dedicated to Lucifer, who represents their defiance of God. Thus, the people who hold our purse strings are conspiring against us. Check it out. It was published a few years ago, but it's worthwhile. Meanwhile, new Cold War. China blocks $19 billion Panama Canal port deal with BlackRock over U.S. influence. The sale of Panama Canal ports by C.K. Hutchison to BlackRock has turned into a geopolitical powder keg. What was originally just a multi-billion-dollar business deal has become a symbol of rising tension between China and the United States. The deal itself would have involved BlackRock, one of the most powerful investment firms in the world, purchasing critical infrastructure that handles 3% of global seaborne trade. This isn't just about money. It's about control over a strategically vital piece of global trade. The stakes here are as high as they come, and both nations know it. Meanwhile, Zog's latest roundup in Agent Orange strikes Gulag America. This is a piece by Joaquin Agopian, highly recommended on my blog. Many who watch those old Hollywood Jewish Mogul-made World War II movies depicting Nazi Gestapo villains demanding their Jewish victims hand over their IDs, always accompanied by the infamous interrogation order, "Where are your papers?" In the more than 8 decades since, dangerous times have changed very little, except for one gapingly humongous difference. Today, the oppressors are the fascist U.S. Jewish state Zionists, and their victims are increasingly not just genocided Palestinians, but any and every human being now willing to call out Israel's pure evil for its ever-graphic daily displays before the eyes of the entire world. How right he is. I'm very troubled by the censorship. Meanwhile, will Trump pull the self-suicide trigger? This is a fascinating piece. As Trump enters the fray in the war to expand Israel and overthrow Iran, his domestic war on the home front, aimed at outlawing criticism of Israel, is also intensifying. In his zeal to be the most loyal Israel patriot ever among U.S. presidents, Donald Trump seems intent on going further and transforming, on behalf of his political masters, much of the USA into an enormous occupation camp. Who are the occupiers pushing for ever more sweeping and coercive control? These days, the answer to such a question is becoming obvious to many. The intensified detention zone is being run to serve the most vicious variety of messianic Zionism devoted to the Talmudic mission of embedding the principle of Jewish supremacy as America's primary underlying guiding stone. No more Bill of Rights. No more innocent until proven guilty. No more mega free enterprise or artistic license. No more nuance. That's a brilliant piece. I think they got it exactly right. Meanwhile, Thomas Massey once again rises to the occasion. Introduce a Dual Loyalty Disclosure Act. Today, I introduced H.R. 2356, the Dual Loyalty Disclosure Act. If we continue allowing dual citizens to run for federal office, candidates should disclose to voters all countries in which they hold citizenship. Mind you, my first political speech at that Ron Paul Freedom Rally in Washington, D.C. in 2008 on April 15th, I declared that dual citizens should not be allowed to occupy policy-shaping or decision-making positions in government because you cannot know that their loyalty to the other state does not outweigh their loyalty to the United States. Meanwhile, Homeland Security Secretary confirmed plans to eliminate FEMA. Oh, this would be such a good thing. Department of Homeland Security, Christine Ohm, said during a cabinet meeting this week she would eliminate the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Providing a report on the Border and Coast Guard Operation Nome said, "We're going to eliminate FEMA." She didn't provide more details. That's great. Great job. President Trump said in response to Noam's remarks during the meeting. Yeah, I agree. They've been running all the fake shootings around the country, by the way, not just Sandy Hook, but we had Parkland, the shooting in Orlando. I mean, the list goes on and on. Nashville, you name it, FEMA was there. Meanwhile, and I find this extremely distressing, RFK Jr. touts Columbia's crackdown on anti-Semitism following Trump admin threats. This is not in the tradition of the Kennedy family. This is not in honor of his father or his uncle. Secretary Stannity, instead of inspiring universal condemnation, the October 7th Holocaust, taking for granted it was real when it was in fact a false flag, triggered a global wave of anti-Semitism. Ivy League campuses became a greenhouse for poison. Maybe they simply saw matters more clearly than you did. President Trump has ordered his cabinet to use every constitutional tool to uproot this divisive weed. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I'm glad Columbia has agreed to this first step and will begin to restore itself as a guard to tolerance, reason, compassion, respect. They must have him by the short hairs. They got to have something over RFK Jr. for him to make such stupid remarks. Meanwhile, we have a whistleblower doctor coming forward to explain the poison put in the vax. There's several here articles about it. Very, very serious stuff. That was all deliberate. Here we have another. Did Fauci and Gates inject people with HIV and cancer through the Pfizer COVID vax? I don't think there's a lot of room for doubt about it. Here's a commentator.
Pfizer was ready to deploy the COVID jab. Operation Warp Speed comes out. Trump gets told about it. Who wasn't ready? Pfizer. So what does Pfizer decide to do? They go downstairs 3 floors to their genetic department, and they find SV40. They use SV40 to design their jab because they're late to the game. And what do they then do? They tell their scientists to use a molecular tool to take the evidence of SV40 out, and then they present a clean version to the FDA and they get approved. Now,
and SV40 is the thing that causes that crazy epithelioma turbo cancers?
No, well, SV40 is what we got in the Qatar event during FDR's term in polio.
The guy that injected his grandchildren.
That's Osher. That's later. But this is the story that goes from FDR all the way up to this point of time. So I want you to think critically now from first principles. Tell me how a monkey virus that shows up in 1951 through 1959 now shows up in COVID vaccines that are supposed to be new and improved 75 years later. And Pfizer tries to take it out so you don't see it. That's why there's 2 legal definitions for BioNTech and for the Pfizer jab.
I don't know how you extract malice from that.
I mean, it's pure malice.
What's the official story? I don't know. What is it?
The official story is they wanted to kill people.
Well, that's not.
That's right. And the guy he's talking to doesn't seem to be able to put 2 and 2 together. Get this. Up to 80% of the unvaccinated are infected with a COVID vax. In other words, it's even in the air we breathe. Just because you didn't take the jab doesn't mean you aren't infected with a COVID vaccine. They tried to kill us and sterilize us with the jab. Naomi Wolf, whom I admire, talks about it. There's more to come. Let's listen to a few.
Eleanor Rigby picks up the rice in the church where a wedding has been. Here comes the sun, here comes the sun, I say it's alright.
Two final stories. Elon Musk merges XAI with Twitter to combine valuation of $113 billion. The Last Refuge reports it looks as though this has something to do with dealing with financial problems. In an announcement on his Twitter account, Musk announced XAI is purchasing Twitter in an internal stock swap. Twitter was valued at $33 billion, XAI at $80. The remaining $12 billion in debt attributed to Twitter can now be removed and made to the debt holders without worry of the financial instability a repayment would generate. In my humble opinion, this was the motive. Those who follow my research on Twitter, this is Sundance, clearly understand how the platform needed to restructure. The same people who organize the Twitter financing are the same people who just organized the merger, as noted by the Wall Street Journal. The new valuations were determined during negotiation between two Musk arms, which both had the same advisors. But it all appears to be perfectly legal. Meanwhile, beneath the sands of Giza, this is not Gaza. This is now in Egypt. An ancient underground city has been discovered. A vast underground city beneath the Giza Plateau has been discovered using cutting-edge satellite radar technology. The city, linked to the legendary emeriti, is described in ancient texts as a repository of universal knowledge and spiritual transformation. This discovery was made possible through Doppler tomography, a groundbreaking technique developed by Professor Filippo Biondi. The findings could redefine our understanding of ancient Egypt's sacred topography and its advanced technological capabilities. A multidisciplinary team of experts, including Egyptologists, radar specialists, and forensic analysts, collaborated on the project. Fascinating. Underground city discovered 2 kilometers deep. In a studied revelation that could rewrite the history books, researchers have discovered a sprawling underground city beneath the Giza Plateau, believed to be the legendary emeriti, a place long shrouded in myth and mystery. This discovery, announced by the CAFRA project, was made possible through advanced satellite radar imaging and a revolutionary technique known as Doppler tomography. The findings, which include intricate networks of tunnels, chambers, and corridors, suggest that the ancient Egyptians possessed knowledge and technology far beyond what modern historians have previously acknowledged. They found structures of civilization up to 2 kilometers deep inside Earth.